some math experts have opined about Common Core and the math standards. There are some who don't really want to hear about how the standards are not very good and are not comparable to the prior California standards, which were rated in math #1. But they are no longer #1 in California. So here's some opinions from a few experts. Zev Werman: it is not difficult to show that the Common Core standards are not on par with those of the highest performing nations. Here's what he says that James Milgram says, who was on the validation committee. This is where the problem with these standards is most marked. While the difference between these standards and those of the top states at the end of 8th grade is perhaps somewhat more than 1 year, the difference is more like 2 years when you compare the expectations of high-achieving countries, particularly most of the nations of East Asia. And here's what a non-American member of the validation committee wrote to the Council of Chief State School Officers when he declined to sign off on the standards. I cannot in all conscience, he says, endorse statements 2 and 3, appropriate in terms of their level of clarity and specifically comparable to the expectations of other leading nations. The standards are, in my view, much more detailed and unclear, as James Milgram has pointed out, and in important respects, they are much less demanding than the standards of leading nations. So we, in California, went from #1 in the nation in math standards to now math standards that do not meet the international standards of other high-performing nations. In summary, the Common Core math standards fall on their clarity. They fail on their clarity and their rigor when compared to better state standards and to those of high-achieving countries. They do not expect algebra to be taught in the 8th grade. The Common Core actually doesn't demand that it be taught in the 8th grade, and instead it defers it to high school, reversing the most significant change in mathematics education in America in the last decade. These recommendations to provide algebra before high school have been in place for many years and were given recommendations by the National Mathematic Advisory Panel, and they are contrary to the practice of international competitors. Moreover, their promise of college readiness rings hollow. Its college readiness standards are below the admission requirements of most four-year state colleges. And in fact, Jason Zimba, who was on the math standards, I do have him on tape, actually on a video, who says that the Common Core standards only prepare students for a 2-year college. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Persh. That finishes up the public comment portion.